We're Hassani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships. This is the Couples Academy Show.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Couples Academy Show. My name is Hassani. Good to have you on, wherever you're dialing in from. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We come on here every single morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to have a conversation about love, life, relationships, what you can do to take your relationship to the next level. And glad to have you on. So wherever you're dialing in from, give us your city, state, and country so we can represent you on today's program. Remember, guys, what we really like for you to do is like, share, and subscribe. That's how we get this message out. So make sure you do that as a way of saying thank you. We want to give you everything that we can. We just ask in return that you simply click a button that says share so people can be impacted as well. A couple quick announcements. This weekend, we're just one day away. Last Chance Weekend. That's right. We got so many couples that are coming to do something different, to show up different, to learn something. You know, a lot of times people come with the agenda and the objective to fix their spouse. If you could just talk some sense into him, if you could just make her right, then all will be well. And then what people realize is that, you know what? It's me, oh Lord, who's standing in the need of prayer. So they're going to go through a personal transformation that will lead to their marital restoration, and we're excited about that. Really quickly, Overcoming the Emotional Triggers class. If you haven't signed up yet, get in before it is full. $197 for 4 hours of information that will guide you through how to overcome your triggers. If that is you, make sure you register. Also, Foundry, the 12-week program starts again February 23rd. So just go to the link right in the video description. There's a bunch of links. You can take advantage of that. Unearthed is also coming up. For those who want to get in before that fills up, feel free to do so as well. But guys, we're talking about part 2. Yesterday, we were talking about what do you do when you want to leave your marriage? So many of you are there right now. I received a couple emails and a couple of text messages because this is exactly where you're at, right? You're in the valley of decision. For some of you, indecision. You're trying to figure out what to do, and you're in a stuck place, and you begin to calculate the costs. Does this make sense at this season of my life? Can I afford to, not financially necessarily, but can I afford to make this decision? Like, there's a lot on the table, you know, when you consider the fact that there are finance involved, there are children involved, there's property, assets, there are, you know, there's all types of things involved in such a decision. Then you got to think about your future and what that looks like. And so I think a lot of times people are just in so much pain that they wind up doing things out of desperation because they can't see how anything will ever change. So they just can't do it anymore. And so the reality is, statistics suggest that quite a large percentage of people who initiate the divorce regret it thereafter. They really do. They thought divorce was a pathway to happiness, and it's really not. Not to say that no divorced people at some point can become happy, but they're using divorce to become happy, to be free. And then they realize that it's compounded pain. Not only do I have the pain of what was happening in the relationship, and now there's an additional pain. I'm on my own, by myself, dealing with the pressures and the realities of this world. Maybe for the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, I at least had a contributor to my life. Now it's just me. So I'm just saying there's a lot to think about. There's a lot going on in these particular decisions, and you want to make sure that you're not making an emotional decision, that it is a rational decision. All right. So what do you do when you don't want your relationship and you don't want your marriage anymore? Pause. Do not rush. Do not be hasty. Okay. Some people are just so impulsive that they just act and don't realize that there are things that they haven't considered before making that decision. Okay? And so a couple of things I want you to be aware of, or want you to consider if you're at the place where you're ready to just throw in the towel because you're just done. Here's a good question. have you been to individual and, not or, and couples counseling? In essence, what we're saying is, have you done everything that you can do? Everything? Have you actually gone to someone who could help you in your situation to overcome the current struggles that you're having in your relationship? Have you gone to counseling? If you have not, push pause, because things can turn around with perspective. And when someone's holding you accountable to how you should be showing up in your relationship and in your life, you may realize, man, I thought this was a lost cause, but it seems that there is still a reason to stay. There's still potential for more. I'm starting to see a change. I'm starting to see things turn around. But both of you have to be committed to a process and submitted to someone else's wisdom and direction to get you out of your situation. Okay? Here's another question to consider, though. Like when you think about this relationship that you just want to throw in the towel, here's a question. Well, was the relationship in trouble before you got married? You know, if we're honest with ourselves, there are some people that we know that there were warning signs in the very beginning, but they ignored them, right? They justified moving forward because I'll fix him. We'll get her together. We'll work that out, but let's get married. And many people think that marriage is a problem solver. It is not. That somehow the issues you had before I do go away once you say I do, because now we're living happily ever after. No, my friend, those issues become larger and bigger, and you become less patient and less willing to deal with it after I do. People show up as their best self before that day. After that day, it's a whole nother situation. Okay? So were there issues that were not addressed before the relationship that you knew were problematic, and now you're here in this space? Well, if that was you, listen, consider that maybe you did not address them effectively. And maybe throughout the course of the relationship, it hasn't been addressed effectively. And if you took the time to do it outside of your feeling and outside of your emotion, if you sit down and have a serious conversation with your partner and you bring in support, whether it be resources and books or counselors or whatever the case may be, a third party, a pastor, anyone that can help navigate you out of your situation into a better situation, listen, you will realize that things can work out. What I do know is that I don't care what couple you look at. I don't care how great that relationship is from a distance. There's something that they're dealing with. Or there is something that they have previously dealt with, which is an indication that, wow, if they've dealt with these things and yet they're here, maybe there's a possibility for us. And so this is why we say you have to surround yourself with other people who are in a good place, because you become a product of the environment that you place yourself in. So if everywhere you go, you're reminded from one couple to another through their life, through their experience, through their lessons, that man, you can overcome, it gives you the belief that it's possible for you. But if everybody in your environment is miserable and they're separated and they're divorced and they're and their spouse haven't spoken for 2-3 weeks, they're fussing and fighting, there's all types of physical violence, well, what that's going to reinforce? A negative message about what marriage is. So your environment is critically important. Another thing to consider, if you are at the point where you're just ready to throw in the towel, wait a minute, are your expectations reasonable? Truth be told, some of us have unrealistic expectations for what we want in our lives and in our relationships. And when they don't happen, you become devastated. But then you project certain things on your spouse. And it may not be your spouse, it may be your unrealistic expectations. Sometimes we put our spouses on pedestals. Sometimes we make our spouses more than human and don't realize that, wait a minute, this is just a person. And maybe I need to properly manage how I perceive, what I think, what my outlook is, what my expectations are, because if I don't, I will constantly live a life of disappointment, because things aren't happening the way I feel they should. And so sometimes in these counseling sessions, we have to really shake people and help them to really question their own philosophies. Well, where did this belief come from? Where did that expectation come from? Why do you think the way that you think? And see, the reality is when they begin to see things differently, When you change the way you look at something, the things that you look at change. And sometimes when we're talking about this marriage mindset, you have to take on a new mindset and a new perspective. And looking at things through a different lens will help you to reevaluate your situation. It may not be to the point where it cannot be fixed, it cannot be restored, it cannot be changed. All things are subject to change. And here's the last one. Have you prayed about it relentlessly? See, this is the question. I say, well, what is the Spirit telling you? I know what your friends are telling you. I know what the media is telling you. I know what these articles online that are presenting information that to me is just insane. I know what that's telling you, but what is the Spirit telling you? Have you prayed about it? Have you been silent enough and still enough to hear from your Creator in terms of what you should do? And the fact of the matter is, overwhelmingly, the majority of people have not. Yeah, I've been praying. Okay, but what have you prayed? Have you specifically prayed for an answer? Should I stay? Should I go? Well, no. Well, what have you prayed? Are your prayers in alignment with an answer? And so oftentimes we're in our feelings, we're in our emotions, and we hear a voice, but it's not that still small voice. We're hearing the voices that oftentimes can infiltrate sound thinking and cause us and drive us to do what we really don't want to do. But if you take the time to pause, to be still, to hear, I'm clear that you will get a direction. You will get an answer. Because once you have an answer, then there's a boldness and an authority and a confidence that you did not have before. But many of us are wavering back and forth because we really don't know what we should do, or we really don't want to leave it, but we feel like we have no choice, and we do things that don't even serve us, that aren't in our best interest. So I'm telling you, when we have said before that the key to your transformation is a supernatural relationship that you have with God, like it takes God to help you out. Because if you don't have a relationship with your Creator, you're just relying on your intellect and you're just relying on your impulses. And oftentimes that's the very thing that will get you in trouble. Guys, I hope that you're hearing me. We're talking about, what do you do when you just want to give up the relationship, when you want to throw the marriage out? What do you do? Listen, you're watching the Couples Academy show. We'll be right back after a few quick announcements. Stay right there.
Couples Academy is committed to serving couples around the world by reaching beyond cultural lines and language barriers. We are proud to announce that we now serve the Spanish-speaking community. So whether you're here in the United States or abroad, Couples Academy has a place for you.
Couples Academy se compromete a servir parejas de todo el mundo, superando las fronteras culturales y las barreras del idioma. Ahora, estamos orgullosos de anunciar que servimos a la comunidad de habla hispana. Entonces, ya sea que estés aquí en los Estados Unidos o en el extranjero, Couples Academy está aquí para servirle.
All right, guys, you're watching the Couples Academy show. We are back. Here I am. Boom. Listen. I just want to say good morning to all of the community who have chimed in today. So Nina and Vishan. Listen, Graham Moore from Hungary. Good to have you. Shalisa, Michelle. Listen, guys, you know who you are. I could do this for the next 3 minutes, but I'm so glad that you're here. But I see you. I want to let you know that I see you. Kia has an amazing comment. She says, so many avenues to counseling and support. Cover marriage in a multitude of counseling and community. Marriages will be attacked all the time. Protect your marriage at all costs. And that's very clear, that marriages are under attack. Under attack by who? The enemy wants to destroy your marriage. Why? Why does the enemy want to destroy your marriage? Maybe for a reason so far beyond your comprehension that it doesn't even make sense to you. See, you have to understand that marriage was created by God. The enemy is the enemy of everything that God created, right? So if God ordains marriage, then Satan will try to fight it. Now, here's the reality. When a man and a woman come together, men are the masculine expression of who God is in the earth, and women are the feminine expression of who God is in the earth. And when a man and a woman come together, they represent the image of God in the earth. And that means that the kingdom of God is being advanced, and Satan wants to do everything he can to tear that down. So he will allow discord and dissension and temptation and all types of things to get in the midst of that relationship to keep you from being united as one. See, the Bible says that when a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave unto his wife, the two shall become one. And so there's power in one. There's power in unity. There's power in agreement. And the enemy knows that. And if he's going to tear God's kingdom down, then what he wants to do is attack the marriage, because marriage is God's secret weapon for kingdom domination in the earth. So it's an indirect way to try to destroy the kingdom. But the devil's going to be defeated, because we're not going to allow him to attack our marriages, because we need to realize that oftentimes the friction and the fussing and the fighting that we have with our spouse is not our enemy. Our spouse is not our adversary. Our spouse is not our opponent. We are on the same team. It's Team Pettiford and Team Smith and Team Rogers and Team Franks. Whatever your last name is, you and your spouse are on the same team. Now, what has to happen is sometimes teams just don't do well, right? They keep losing and losing and losing. I'm thinking about all you Laker fans. You guys are in a bad situation right now, right? Because your team keeps dropping the ball. Now, with all of the talent on that team, why can't they come together in alignment and in unity to do what is necessary? And oftentimes in your marriage, there's so much power and authority and wisdom and insight and gifts and talents. And there's such a beautiful spirit in some of these individuals, but for some reason, they're not in alignment. And what they're called to do, they can't do because they haven't understood their true purpose and meaning for the marriage. The marriage isn't just about fun and games. It's not just for the benefit of what you get from it. Great communication, great sex, the ability to parent children, to live life together, to travel, to have a lifestyle that you couldn't have it on your own. But there's a purpose for it. And when you tap into your purpose, it will allow you to truly understand what the true meaning of being together as one is all about. And then you get beyond all of the superficialities, you get beyond all of the conflict, and you come in alignment with that purpose. I'm telling you that if Daniel and I were not drenched, soaked, and saturated in purpose, maybe we wouldn't be together. There had to be something during those dark days, during those times when we felt like giving up, throwing in the towel, and calling it quits. There had to be something that kept us from leaving. There had to be that thing. There was the light at the end of the tunnel. It was that spoken word over our marriage that we were holding on to see the manifestation of what had been promised. And so this is why I say you've got to get in relationship with God, and God has got to become the foundation, the focus, the core, the crux of your union, because it's going to take something bigger and better and more powerful than yourself to help you overcome the situations that you're in. And if you're truly submitted, and if you're really listening, I'm telling you, you may not be so quick to throw in the towel. And if you cast your cares upon him, you don't walk around with the burdens. You don't walk around with all the triggers. Listen, guys, there's a system. There are principles to this thing. And when you tap into it, it will literally transform your life and your situation. Listen, I'm going to these comments in real time. I haven't read these prior to. Kia B says, making sure our prayers for our marriages glorify God. Here it is. He cares about our happiness and joy and peace, but ultimately, how do we make sure that our desires line up with his will? Being intentional. There it is. it would be his will, according to his word, that you be together, that you restore, that you reconcile, right? That would be his desire. And if you are committed to obeying his word and having desires that are in alignment with his, it will allow you to show up in your relationship in a completely different way. J.D. Pruitt says, I pray for my marriage daily, but my spouse is not engaged at all. That's okay, man. Keep praying. Keep praying, because for a period of time, Danielle was not engaged at all. She was done. It was a wrap. But it was my diligence and consistency in doing things. And let me tell you something. The reason why you pray is because you don't have enough within yourself to change the situation around. You just don't. Sometimes everything you attempt to do, which is good, is not received by your spouse. In fact, it is rejected by your spouse. But there's a scripture that says some plant, some water, but God gives the increase. You have to do your part, but you have to rely on the system that he's established to do its part. And when you do that and you're submitted to it, things can begin to change. Because think about it. Danielle had been saying, you're this, you're that, and you're the other. And I wasn't hearing her. I tuned out what she said. But then I heard somebody else say the same thing, and it resonated with me, and I began to act. Now, she could have remained frustrated. Well, I done told you the same thing you hearing from somebody else. Why are you listening to them and not what and she could have been bitter and resentful and not want to engage in the process. Or she could have been like, well, thank God somebody finally got through. And so what you want to pray is that God will raise someone else up. God will allow a situation or a circumstance to help change the heart of your spouse. But in addition to doing that and praying for the other person, are you praying for yourself? Like, if we just deal with it on a human level, what are the problems that occurred in the relationship that you've contributed to? What are the ways that you're showing up that you haven't made a decision to change, and you keep coming off the wrong way? You are still off-putting. You are still creating dissension and discord. You are still doing things that repel your partner. Are you doing the work? So it's more than just changing the heart of your spouse. What are you doing to change you? That's not for you, JD. That's for everybody, including you. That's where we have to get to, because at the end of the day, we are the lowest common denominator in our relationships. And guess what? We have the ability of changing the quality of our relationships. And so if we take on that responsibility, things can begin to change. All right, LaShawn has a statement. I often tell my husband, we have tried everything but God's way. But you done said something there. You done said something. It's funny because when we talk about God's way, well, what is his way? I remember it was Miles Monroe, who's one of the greatest teachers and preachers on the planet, even from the grave. He said that most people are biblically illiterate when it comes to what the Bible has to say about marriage. And if we really read the scripture from Genesis to Revelations through that lens, man, it would, our minds would be blown about all of the things that it says about how to have a healthy relationship. That's doing it his way. Like whatever this book says, boom, let's do it. Because you've made the Bible final authority in your marriage, because it is a law. It is a form of government. It is a constitution. It is a system in place. And when you operate according to the laws and the principles of that book, it will work for you. At the end of the day, our body is governed by laws. This earth governed by laws. The universe governed by laws, right? Our relationships are governed by laws. If we're ignorant of those laws will work against us. If we're knowledgeable of those laws and submit and are obedient to those laws, once we obey them, those laws will become obedient to us. See, that's a deep one there. You got to think about that. When you obey the laws, of God, the laws of God will obey you. See, that's a deeper teaching. But that's what it all comes down to. When you embrace not just his spirit, but his system, not just his presence, but his principles, all things are subject to change. Here's a statement. How do you start the conversation around creating a purpose for our marriage? Just start it. Well, okay, how? Well, use these videos, and we're not the only game in town, right? There's others, but use something. See, when it's coming from you, your spouse may be off-put by it. But if you say, hey, you want to watch something? You want to read something? Okay, let's do it. And the same messaging comes through another vessel, comes from another source. Now, both of you are in the a student position. You're not playing the role as teacher, or you're not the leader, or you're not the guide to kind of, force a conversation. Both of you are open to hearing from someone else. And that's what worked for me, right? I was open to hear from someone else. I was willing to submit to someone else's wisdom on how to do things, brought that into the relationship, and things began to shift and change. Ralph says, all marriages can survive with the correct work and mindset for having a better marriage and one's self. Very, 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 very true. All marriages can survive. And so the question is, are you doing the work? Are you putting it in? Because if you're putting in the work, then all things will be subject to change. Gonzalez says, now we can thank God for saving our marriage. That's right. You better. Sadly, we live in a world that tells us it's okay to be in our feelings, give up, or try something new. If not careful, unable to hear that quiet, still voice. That's so true. And society will make you think that you're stupid, that something's wrong with you, that girl, you done lost your mind. You need to, what? You gonna stay under right? You're listening to the wrong source. You listen to people who have what you want and have been where you are, because by doing that, you gain a pathway. Listen, all the things we're talking about, guys, is a mindset shift, is bringing in the spiritual element to give you, the wisdom and the support to make it through your situation. And you can do it. I want to encourage you. And that's why we have these programs, and that's why we have these classes, and that's why we have these experiences, to really help you realize that there is another way for you in your situation. So reach out to us at couplesacademy.org. We would love to talk to you on the phone through a discovery call to figure out how we can be of assistance to you. I hope that today was helpful. Listen, today is Thursday. We have one more day. Tomorrow morning, I'm coming to you live again. It will be right at the beginning of an experience that we will have this weekend that will be transformative for so many people involved. So make sure you pray, not only for them, because when you pray for them, you're sowing a seed. And guess what? You can reap a harvest from the seeds that you sown. Boom, guys. Listen, I love you, and I will see you tomorrow on the Couples Academy Show.